In the quiet suburbs of Wichita, Kansas, one man seemed to be the picture of a good neighbor. Dennis Rader was a family man, a scout leader, and the president of his church council. To everyone who knew him, he was just another ordinary guy, living an ordinary life, blending seamlessly into the fabric of his community. He was the kind of person you'd trust, the kind of person you'd never look at twice. But behind this mask of normalcy, a dark and terrifying secret was brewing. A secret that would remain hidden for over 3 decades. This is the story of a man who lived 2 completely separate lives. By day, he was Dennis Rader, the compliant city worker and devoted churchgoer. But when darkness fell, he became someone else entirely. He became a predator, a phantom who stalked the streets of his own town, bringing terror to the families who lived there. His name would become synonymous with fear, whispered in hushed tones across the state. This phantom called himself BTK. BTK stood for his gruesome method: bind, torture, kill. It wasn't just a signature, it was a promise. Starting in 1974, a series of horrifying crimes began to plague Wichita. The attacks were brutal, methodical, and seemingly random, which made them all the more terrifying. No one knew who the killer was or why he was doing it. The entire city was on edge, locking their doors and fearing the shadows. The police were baffled, chasing a ghost who left behind few clues but plenty of heartbreak. What made BTK especially chilling was his arrogance. He didn't just commit these acts, he craved recognition for them. He began a twisted correspondence with the police and local media, sending letters that taunted them with details only the killer could know. These letters were filled with chilling descriptions of his crimes, poems, and puzzles. He was playing a game, a deadly cat-and-mouse chase where he held all the cards. He wanted the world to know about BTK, to fear his name, and to acknowledge his power. For years, he was a ghost. His letters were the only proof he existed. He described stalking his victims, learning their routines, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He called it his project. His victims were ordinary people, a family of 4, a young woman living alone, a neighbor down the street. There was no clear pattern, which meant anyone could be next. Wichita was held hostage by an invisible monster, and the man responsible was hiding in plain sight, perhaps even attending the same church as his victims' families. Imagine the sheer audacity. Dennis Rader would go to work, come home to his wife and children, and lead a scout meeting, all while secretly planning his next horrific act. He was a master of compartmentalization, keeping his monstrous alter ego locked away from his public life. No one suspected a thing. His family, his friends, his congregation, they saw a slightly awkward but harmless man. But behind the locked doors of his home, inside the darkest corners of his mind, a monster waited patiently. Then, in 1991, after a decade and a half of terror, the letters stopped. The killings ceased. BTK vanished as mysteriously as he had appeared. The case went cold, but the fear lingered. Had he died? Moved away? Was he in prison for something else? For 13 long years, there was only silence. The people of Wichita began to breathe a little easier, hoping the nightmare was finally over. The BTK case files gathered dust, becoming a dark chapter in the city's history. But monsters don't always stay gone. In 2004, to celebrate the 30th anniversary of his first crime, BTK resurfaced. A letter arrived at the Wichita Eagle, the local newspaper, containing a victim's driver's license and photos from a crime scene that had never been made public. He was back. The game was on again. The city's old wounds were torn open, and the fear that had been dormant for over a decade returned with a vengeance. He was older now, but his ego was as big as ever. This time, however, the world was different. Technology had evolved, and BTK, in his arrogance, was about to make a fatal mistake. He continued his communication, sending more packages, including puzzles, and even a doll that symbolized one of his victims. He wanted to know if he could communicate with the police via a floppy disk without being traced. In a clever move, the police placed a hidden ad in the newspaper, replying, "Rex, it will be okay," assuring him it was safe. Trusting the police, BTK sent them a floppy disk. It was the break they had been waiting for. On that disk, forensics experts found hidden metadata from a document that had been deleted, but not fully erased. The data pointed to a computer at Christ Lutheran Church and identified the last user as Dennis. The net began to close. Investigators quickly cross-referenced the church's council members with their list of potential suspects. There, they found the name, Dennis Rader, the church council president. It seemed impossible. Could this pillar of the community, this unassuming family man, be the sadistic killer who had haunted Wichita for 30 years? Police put Rader under surveillance and obtained a DNA sample from his daughter through a medical pap smear warrant. The lab results were conclusive. The DNA from his daughter was a familial match to the DNA found at the BTK crime scenes. They had him. The ghost who had terrorized a city for decades finally had a face. On February 25, 2005, Dennis Rader was pulled over during his lunch break and arrested. The news sent shockwaves through Wichita and the entire world. The reaction was disbelief. His own wife and children were stunned. His neighbors, who had shared pleasantries with him for years, were horrified. The man they thought they knew was a complete fabrication, a carefully constructed mask to hide the predator underneath. The good neighbor, the church leader, was a cold-blooded killer. During his interrogation, Rader confessed in horrifying, matter-of-fact detail. With no remorse, he calmly described each of his 10 murders, treating them like entries in a logbook. He spoke of his projects and the thrill he got from the power of life and death. The man in the interrogation room was not the Dennis Rader anyone knew. It was BTK, unveiled at last. He was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences, one for each life he had so brutally taken. The story of Dennis Rader is a chilling reminder that evil doesn't always come in a monstrous form. It doesn't always have fangs or claws. Sometimes it wears a friendly smile. It sits next to you in church. It waves to you from across the street. The most terrifying monsters are the ones we never suspect. They are the ones who live among us, hidden behind a mask of normalcy. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes, the mask is the person. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the shadows of the human psyche. Stay safe, and always be aware.